Hey, my name is Bruce Gilson, and I want to welcome you to another episode of our Knowledge Basics. Today we're talking coax. But you know what? Coax means a couple different things. And what you probably may or may not know, that coax actually means that it's two things, sharing the same axis, ax. So, to throw you for a little loop, this is a coax speaker. Because you see, the subwoofer and the tweeter are on the same axis, but it's two different things sharing that one axis. So if you've ever heard anybody say, well, that's a coaxial speaker, you're like, wait, what do you mean? The speaker runs on, no, it doesn't run on coax cable. I mean, we're not talking about coax speakers today. Anyways. All right, so we're gonna be actually talking about coax cable and the different types of connectors that go on the end of coax cable, but in the AV world, we primarily deal with SDI, which stands for Serial Digital Interface. Jonathan, look that up, make sure I did that right. But Serial Digital Interface, and then the end of the connector, we've got BNC, and there's a lot to get into. There's a lot of ways to get this wrong. Hopefully there's a couple of ways to get it right, and hopefully you learn something in this big giant episode all about SDI, coax, cables, connectors, F-type. It's all coming. All right, guys, so this particular episode of Knowledge Basics, it's a pretty complicated one, and here's the big reason why. Most people don't know this, but the very first termination I ever learned to make as an AV professional was SDI. And in fact, I think that there's a lot of people, you're kind of dabbling and you get into SDI and you look at it and you go, oh, that looks pretty simple. It's just a little bitty connector on a wire. I should be able to do that. And then you get into it and maybe you're one of the lucky few that it just works the first time. But most of the time you have issues, and I'm gonna start trying to help you understand why you have so many issues when you first get into SDI connections. On our table today, we have a mess, is what we've got. We've got a mess of tools and connectors, and this is really the first step of why you get into trouble with SDI, is because there is really just a ton of different variations when it comes to SDI connectors, SDI tools, SDI cable. And so I'm hoping that we can spend a little bit of time together today to try to work through some of those details. And then we're actually going to teach you how to make some SDI connections. We've got a couple different types that we want to show you today. So this might be a little bit of a long episode. So if you don't know what to do, go to the fridge, crack open your favorite bubbly beverage, sit back, relax, and just listen to the lull of my voice as I explain all this nerdy technology, whatever stuff. All right, so we're gonna jump in, okay? So we have basically two types of SDI connectors. Let's start with the connectors because the connectors inform us on the right tool. We have, I'm sorry, did I say two? I didn't mean two, I meant three. Why? Because two would be way too easy. Maybe it's two. Anyways, I'll tell you why it's different. One type is a compression type. And we're going to be teaching you how to do a compression connection. So this is a compression connector. There's a company, we are not sponsored by Belden, but there's a company called Belden. They make a lot of great cable, a lot of great connectors. This is a Belden connector. Their actual thing, they call it as a double bubble. Now, it's a different type of really a compression connector, but it's proprietary to their stuff and to their tools. So we'll get into double bubble a little bit later. We might actually just do our own video with double bubble, just because I don't want to confuse you. But so we have compression, KLEIN, which you're going to find KLEIN if you go to like Home Depot, Lowe's, that type of stuff. We're also not sponsored by KLEIN if you're out there. Just saying. Anyways, but KLEIN Tools has got a lot of stuff that comes off the shelf at your Home Depot type store, electrical stores, stuff like that. So this is another type of compression connector. And then we have this kind right here. This is what we refer to as a 3-piece. It comes in 3 different pieces. And the 3-piece takes its own tool, and we'll get into how do you do a 3-piece connection, okay? And so that's a specific type of, how to terminate. I don't know if there you go, that worked. Also with us today, we have a female side, which is something you don't see a whole lot in building your own termination cables, but you can build your own female connectors. So we've got that here today. And then we've got this real big, now this is back to compression, but I'm gonna get into why this connector is so large, and then there's actually larger ones than this, and we can talk about that. Okay, so main thing I want you to take away from that, there is compression connectors, there's 3-piece connectors, and then Belden has their own, which we use a lot, and it's called double bubble, which is another type of compression connector. All right, Bruce, so we just learned 3 different types of compression, connection, 3-piece, but what does that mean when it comes to all my tools? Well, normally I say, hey, today we're gonna need, and I give you a short little tool list. On my table today, I've got tons of tools because it really depends on what type of connector you're using as to what type of tools you're gonna need. So let's start here, okay? When you're doing a 3-piece connection for SDI, you're gonna need a wire stripper. You're probably gonna need something to cut your wire with, right? You're gonna need a wire stripper. We're gonna teach you how to use this the right way. And then you're gonna need one of these die compression kits, okay? And this particular one is probably a real preferred one. This has swappable dies, and so you wanna make sure that you have the correct die set in there for your connector type. This one does not have swappable dies. It's a fixed die set, and it doesn't have the ratcheting motion that that one has, and so this would be a little bit more expensive. Typically it comes with a complete die set, and then this one would be a little bit cheaper tool. So we're gonna get into how to use that in a moment, but these would be the tools for a 3-piece, okay? And really it's more like that, because this is just an extra one of those, and this is the nicer one. Now, let's get into compression real quick, okay? I'm gonna put this back over to the side. In compression, you're gonna use basically the same / similar wire stripper, so that doesn't really change. We have this one right here by KLEIN. We also have this one, and I'm gonna talk about these 2 differences in a moment. But then you need your compression tool. And so this once again is a KLEIN compression tool. You can go find this at your local hardware store. So if you're using a compression connector like this one today, you would need your compressor tool, your wire stripper, and then, like once I said, something to cut your wire with, most likely. And then, what do I always say? We're professionals, and what do professionals do? They label their cables. And so I can't forget that we've got heat shrink today on our cable, and we have our heat gun. The reason that we use heat shrink and a heat gun for our labels is to make sure that label lasts as long as possible, so that people that come long after us have some idea of what this cable actually was meant to do. All right, now, that was complicated, but we're not done going down the rabbit hole of what is Coax, what is SDI. Because not only do we have different types of connectors, not only do we need different types of tools, we also have different types of cable, which can be really complicated and annoying. So in video land, which is really the #1 interface that uses BNC SDI connections, in video land, the primary 2 types of video cable are RG59 and RG6. Now those numbers have reference to your jacket size. There's, if I can show you right here, there's a little, golden copper node in the middle, then there's the white around it, then there's another jacket, and then there's the insulation. So I'm gonna show you that. I'm gonna open it up for you so you can get a better idea. Gotta get my orientation right on my cable, on my tool. This is just to try to open this cable up quickly. All right, so inside of this cable, we have our center piece of copper, that's solid copper. Then we've got this white insulation portion. Then we have foil protecting that. And then we have all these stranded things. Now remember I said coax is when two things share the same axis. So the stranded wire is actually one of your conductors. And then the copper is your second. So this is a two conductor wire, and they share the same axis. So when we get into the cable type, RG59, RG6, it's referencing the different diameters of the elements inside the cable. And that's why this can get really complicated, because not only do you have RG59, RG6, but then you got RG8 and RG213 and RG11 and RG... You get the point. There's like a lot of them. So this is why SCI can go wrong, is because you could say, well, Bruce, I did a great job and I got a connector and I managed to get the right tool for the connector, which is this one. And I started putting it together and it still didn't work. And that's probably because you didn't have the right connector with the right type of cable with the right tool. And now you can see how you can get yourself in trouble. So here's the takeaway. Pay attention to what is your cable type. Make sure that once you know what your cable type is, you get the right type of connector for the cable type. Then, once you identify your connector, then you make sure that you have the right tool. And then all of a sudden, we're like almost there to having something successful happen once we get done with terminations. I'm tired. Anybody want a break? Well, you don't get one because we got more to learn. All right, here we go. Let's get into the next real important phase. Let's say, okay, we've got the right cable, which in today's example, we are using RG59. And you say, I have the right type of connector, which in today's example, we have an RG59 connector, right? It sounds like it's starting to make sense. We also are gonna be using a compression connector. So guess what? I can start putting some tools away. Put that one away, I can put that one away, put this away. I'm gonna talk about these here in just a second. I'm gonna use my compression tool with my compression connector. All right, but let's talk about our wire strippers. Inside a wire stripper for coax, remember, coax, two things sharing the same axis. Well, it kind of begins to make sense that when we strip that wire, we need to strip the wire with multiple layers that we're pulling off. This particular type of wire stripper you can find, this is monoprice, you can find it online. But it's more importantly that I show you on this tool, there are 3 different screws, and those screws, it comes with a little Allen wrench. This is gonna be the same for pretty much any brand of this particular type of cable. And I can, with my Allen wrench, I can adjust, there's little razor blades inside here. And there's 3 razor blades, one for each portion of the jacket. And if you see here on this particular tool, it tells me that for RG58, I need to do these settings. For RG59, I need to do these settings, and RG6, I needed to do these settings. The reason it's trying to tell me that is because this tool is a little bit more universal, and I can do multiple different types of cables with just this one tool, okay? But this one is made by KLEIN, and then this one only does RG59 or RG6. So I'm gonna use this one, but the same thing is happening inside here, that there are 3 razor blades. And so I'm gonna get a little close up of that, and you can see that there's a razor blade that's a little bit lower than all the other razor blades. That is the one that I want to be nearest to the end of my cable. So when I'm using this, I'm trying to identify where's that razor blade that's the highest, and I want that one to be at the end of my cable. And then I'm taking my shield here, and that shield allows me to set the correct depth for my cable. So I'm pushing my cable all the way in until I hit that, piece right there. And then when you're using this, both of these have the same thing. It's a little finger hole, and it's so that you can do this motion. Now, most people do this. Guess what? That's wrong. It's another way. You can mess the whole thing up. I know, there's so many ways to mess the whole thing. The reason that that's wrong, and I'm gonna show you real quick, the reason that that's wrong is, oh man, I'm so fortunate. Let's see if we can get a close-up of that. There is little bitty hairs of the outer braided conductor that have now wrapped around my center post. And when that happens, I'm now bridging the connection between those two different conductors, and I'm totally messing up the signal. So you're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to, when you use these, you're supposed to rock it back and forth. And when you rock it back and forth, you're cutting one direction, you're cutting another direction, you're cutting another direction, you're cutting another direction, and you're trying to prevent from that outer braided section wrapping around your center post. Now when I pull that out, we're gonna do a close-up of that, and you can see that all of the outer braid is the same length, and you can also see that none of it's wrapped around the post. And that's really the main reason you don't just, because that's a different way that you can get it wrong. Okay, so here we go. We have successfully stripped this wire, and then if I begin to pull this braid back like this, you're gonna see that I've got my next layer, and my next layer is set to a specific depth, and then I've got my shielded jacket back there. This is where things get a little bit different depending on what connector you're using. Today, right now, we're gonna be using a compression connector. So whenever I'm making this termination, I am going to pull all of these, this braided conductor, I'm gonna pull that back about like that, where it kind of looks like a paintbrush when you were a little kid. You remember? You were like doing some watercolor and you just, and then your art teacher got mad at you and they started calling your paintbrush Mr. Frizzy. I might have scars, I don't know. But anyways, that's what you want it to look like. You want it to look like Mr. Frizzy, just all sticking out there. And then inside of all of the connectors, there's going to be the center dialect post that you have to make sure that your center conductor slides into that center dialect, and it all feels a little bit different. On this particular connector, when I push it, I can feel like just this little click, and so I like that. On the Belden connector, they've got that center post all the way at the back, and you can't even see it in the front. I'm gonna show you the difference here. See how you got that post and it's all the way at the end, and right that one, you just can't see it at all? Well, that's because Belden put the dialect all the way at the very end. And so when I'm connecting a Belden connector, I can physically see it slide in. And then when I begin to push it down, it's pushing that dialect into the right location. But in this particular connector that we're using, it's at the end. So that's okay, because I slowly begin to slide it in there, and I can feel this little click, and it's pretty satisfying. So I felt it click. Now I'm confident that that's good. I made sure that all my frizzy things were sticking out. And then guess what? Now things get a little bit easier. I got the right connector, the right tool, the right cable. I'm feeling like this is gonna be a really solid connection. Right here, in this particular KLEIN tool, this piece lines up with the head of my BNC cable, and then there's like a knuckle inside here, and this knuckle grabs onto the back of my connector, and when I do this, did you hear that click? It just connected, it just clicked on. It was amazing. It's a completed cable. Because I'm an AV professional, I know that this cable's not done. It's got to get tested, it's got to get labeled. So let's label our cable today, because a lot of videos, I don't label the cable. I tell you to, but I don't physically do it. And you know what, I was thinking to myself, well, what if they actually don't believe me? What if they don't think that I'm supposed to be labeling cables? Well, you do have to label the cable, and this is why it's important. You want to make sure that you are putting the exact same cable number on both ends of the cable so that if this is going through a wall, it's going through a rack, it's going from one place to another place, you go and you find the cable on one side and it says 10-123, you want to make sure that you can go to that other far away place and also find the same cable that says 10-123. The other step that we always take as AV professionals is we always heat shrink our cables. You can use self-laminated cables, and that would also protect it. And I forgot to plug it in. So give me a second. Here we go. Okay, now we got our heat gun plugged in. Sounds like it's working. We're gonna heat shrink this. All right, I wanna show you something. This cable is properly heat shrinked, and it should be really clear. The heat shrink should turn clear, and you should be able to read the numbers really easily. This side is not heat shrinked, and see how it's really milky, and you can't really quite make out what it is? So when you are heat shrinking your cable, you do want to make sure that you heat shrink it all the way where your clear actually becomes clear, that it's not that milky color. So if I'm going to go through the effort of actually heat shrinking my label, I want to make sure that it's nice and pretty and I can read it. All right, there we are. You've only been watching this video for 2.5 hours and we made our first cable. Congratulations, we made it to the end. Now, I've been doing this a long time and I've had a lot of conversations with people and they say, you know what, I hate SDI. It's really hard, whatever. That's normally because you didn't go through the other steps that we talked about. And so I know you're like, dude, this was a really in-depth, boring video. I tried to make it. Now you hurt my feelings. Nah, don't worry about it. Anyways, hey, thanks for joining us. I hope you learned something. If you did, make sure that you hit the subscribe and the bell and the like, and make sure you check out eventtech.av.com. We've always got fun and interesting things being added to our website as we venture out there in the world, and we're continuing to do installs and deploying large systems and event spaces. So we're so grateful that you joined us here today to learn something new, and we'll see you next time.